everyone. Thank you for being here today. I think you can all hear me okay. I'm Lesley Marr. I'm Next Gen BPS. I work on the sustainability side, but also on business development. Got a long history in film and television, so know many of your faces here, and it's lovely to see you all, so thank you for coming. And I want to firstly introduce Kim Rowell, who's a very important person and a very impressive person, actually, and I'm really excited to be sitting on the stage with you today. So Kim is a trustee and a board member for lots and lots of very prestigious organisations, charities and boards, and I'm not going to list them all because there's so many, but you can look her up on LinkedIn afterwards. But she's been described as a pioneering individual, and I think that's pretty impressive, as well as being a woman, which is always a good thing. And she also has a day job as the managing editor at ITN News. So I think just first of all, before we talk about sustainability things, I'd just like to understand from you, Kim, how you got into the industry and a bit more about your role, and then sort of how you got into sustainability in particular.
Thank you. That's hugely flattering, but thank you. I think I got into the industry almost by accident. I trained as a journalist at Leeds Uni, and I'm from North Devon originally, so moved back home after uni, massively naive. I was like, where's my job? Where's my job? And then it wasn't there. And I managed to get into the industry, started working for 2-4 Broadcast. I was a runner, actually was a sound technician randomly on Open Gardens, which I was absolutely terrible at, but they let me do it anyway. Wanted to move to London, so applied and got a job at GMTV as it was, so I know quite a few people that work in the tech side of things here at ITV. And we worked on interactive, which at the time was competitions, voting, comments on programmes. After that, I worked for ITV as a channel, so I got to do things like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I'm a celebrity dancing on ice, which is coming back around soon. And then I decided I wanted to work for Fremantle, who make those programmes. So Britain's Got Talent, The X Factor, Celebrity Juice, Take Me Out, things like that. And then I remembered I had a degree in journalism, so I thought maybe I should...
Better go back to what I learned.
But do you know what? I had the most fun of my life working on those programmes, the big shiny floor shows, and the teams around them are phenomenal and some of the best in the business. But I then went and worked for Channel 4, and that was more at the time they had sports contracts, so with the NFL and horse racing and things like that, and also more charitable things as well, like Stand Up to Cancer. And then after Channel 4, I was there for a couple of years, and I went to work for The Telegraph. It's quite a squiggly career, I'll admit. I've worked in production and publishing.
You're not even that old. How did you do
I'm probably older than you think I am.
Okay, fine.
But, so at The Telegraph, we started doing podcasts again when there was a resurgence of podcasts in 2016. And I was fortunate to work with Bryony Gordon, who does a lot in the mental health space. Right. And our first podcast was with Prince Harry, when people liked Prince Harry. Not that they don't now, but maybe it's a bit more contentious. It was the 20th anniversary of his mum's death, and he was talking to us about his mental health around that situation. It was the first time they properly addressed it. So we did 3 series of that podcast. And then after that, I went to work for the BBC. And I was, at the time it was called BBC Stories, which was a brilliant team and department to be part of, because there was a lot of young journalists making content for their peers. So everything from money, mental health, gender, diversity, the environment. Yes. And I think then it became really obvious and really prevalent that green memos and things like that were an afterthought. Or like really, people didn't want to do them. It wasn't interesting. People didn't want to take the time to address these elements of production. And at the time, they were trying, when I was there, which was 2019 to about 2020, end of 2022.
Okay. So through COVID as well.
Through COVID, which was really challenging. Yeah. They started to try and pilot Albert certification within BBC News. Yeah. I'm not sure how they got on with it, but the part that it was really hard. There was a level of accountability that probably wasn't there, and that they couldn't arguably sustain within BBC News at that time. And I'm sure it's evolved beyond my involvement in it. But again, it was like, oh, who wants to do this? Who's going to come and talk about, the sustainability side? And it's like, well, it shouldn't be that. It should be that it's collaborative and inclusive, and we want to do that. Yeah. So that was probably my first eye-opening moment towards it. And then extracurricularly, I was asked to join the Global Advisory Board for a charity called In Place of War.
Yes.
And this is obviously what we're here to talk about more, and that's outside of work, but it really opened my eyes to how we need to put this on the agenda and how we need to push it to the top of the list.
And I do think, it's climate change, but it's a way of engaging young people. These projects are engaging young people in climate change. And, what we do as our jobs, all of us here, we make stories, we make television programs. And, what we should probably focus on is getting more of those climate stories out there, getting more content on screens. But I think the projects that you're involved in are really, really kind of going to really drive some really interesting and different ways of getting content to people, but raising awareness and getting people to really understand what is happening. I mean, I know you only have to watch the news last night to see what's going on in LA and how hideous it is. And, that really sort of makes you sit and think for a few minutes. But I think sort of getting more engaged and understanding sort of projects that Kim's involved in, it's absolutely brilliant and really, really quite interesting. So we're gonna just talk about a couple of them. I'm just going to run the video first of all.
Yeah.
So you can...
Climate change is an urgent global issue that faces us all. Every year, climate change is more evident, with many observable changes to the planet. These changes have devastating consequences. We need to act now, or it will be too late. EarthSonic is a global movement that tells the story of climate change through music and storytelling. We work with Indigenous communities, musicians, scientists, activists, and climate experts to empower individuals and inspire a clear call to action to stop climate change. As a part of our plans, we are creating an archive of field recordings, documenting the changing sounds of biodiversity and landscapes in the Arctic and beyond. We are working with a diverse group of globally recognized artists to turn these sounds into pieces of music that will engage young people's hearts and minds. Music has been a catalyst for change in so many historic global challenges. Let's use it to save our dying planet.
So I don't know if there's any musicians in the building today, but it's absolutely fascinating and amazing what can be done actually. And I think just give us a bit of an overview of just a couple of those projects.
Yeah, sure, it's evolved, and they brought me on board initially because they wanted more of the storytelling perspective, and the ambition, again, from the outset, was to try and host a concert on a glacier. And you're all tech people, you can imagine like everything from how do you get a battery to actually survive in those extreme temperatures.
Ours do.
But also, musicians' fingers.
Yeah.
How do you pluck a guitar?
That was my first question
exactly.
to you.
So that was the initial project. And obviously there was an element, we worked with academics and we all had to undertake carbon literacy training as a part of this, because it's like, we went on a recce and everyone's like, well, even going on a recce, surely that's counterintuitive to the climate change. Why are you even going in the first place? But conversations that we've had with people that live amongst climate change, there's a real dichotomy of them. They need connectivity, they need the internet to be able to get their message out there, they need fuel for their cars to be able to travel and see their friends and family, but yet they're living in circumstances where they can actually often see the effects of climate change right in front of their eyes.
Should we talk about the glacier? Because you were saying about potential concert and doing the name of the glacier. I'm just trying to.
The Russell Glacier.
Yeah. So it's Russell Glacier and it's in Greenland, right?
It's near it's near Kangerlussuaq, which used to be an old army military base. So if you ever fly to Kangerlussuaq, there was nothing there, and it still looks like a military base. But the Russell Glacier.
I'm just going to play a little
bit.
I think we've got a little bit of the video.
It's quite noisy.
Just listen, there's a lot of wind noise on this. So just this is Kim, talk through what you're doing.
Yeah, so this is us walking across the lake, and on the right-hand side, you'll see in a minute, is the Russell Glacier. The guy in front of me is called Andy, and he's from an electronic musical act called Bicep, and they were there recording some of the sounds. Obviously, it's immensely windy and what have you. But it was interesting because as we were walking across, you could hear it sounded like a car door closing, like a real and I was like, what is that? And it's the sound of the glacier melting. That's what it sounds like, because it's shifting. But it literally sounds like someone's just slammed a door. and again, talking to the people that are working there and the academics and the experts that we have working with us, you have to stop a glacier freezing by creating a certain curtain underneath the glacier.
Oh, wow.
That's the best way to try and approach it. But they've also documented that the whale song has actually changed because the waters are getting warmer.
Yeah.
And the sounds and the noises that they make have evolved because of the temperature change in the water. So it's things like that.
And you were saying how, I was sort of asking how thick is this glacier to walk across? And,
yeah, you could see.
And when you said it melted not long after.
Yeah,
you
we
came
were
across
there in
it.
April, and it was very thick. I was obviously very tentative. I think you see my feet being like, okay, let's get across let's get across this ice. But you could see the water underneath, and that was the last time they would allow anyone to walk across it because the seasons are shifting, and obviously there's an economic impact because husky seasons are shifting and they're becoming shorter, so they're not making as much money out of the kind of tourist trade that they would anticipate.
And I think going there and seeing that really is very emotive. It must really kind of hit home to you. But also you were talking about the people that live there and the communities and how they see it every day. I mean, okay, we turn on the news and we see climate change on the news. We see, the weather changing, the winds, the storms, but it's sort of over in a flash. And I think if you're living in it, like these communities are, it must really, really...
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I learned from that trip is you can't impose a westernised viewpoint on these cultures. You can't go there and be like, I've got this solution, do this. You can't do that. You need to give them the tools and enable them to be able to come up with these changes that are sustainable, and they can actually invest in and build their communities around these changes by implementing them incrementally most of the time, because you can't make a big change all of a sudden, clearly. But there is lots that they're doing, particularly in Greenland, around the community, and they're doing a lot through music and audio-visual to try and get that message out there, because EarthSonic is targeted at younger people.
Yes.
And as we've established, climate change is not sexy. So it's trying to cut through the noise and get them to care.
And actually music is sexy, so let's try and make it sexy.
But also there's fascinating, I don't know if anyone's ever heard throat singing. I would encourage you to Google it, because it's extraordinary. It's like a real guttural, but but people kind of have battles of throat singing. But also there's Icelandic rappers that we're working with and trying to sample the music that they're making to appeal to that younger demographic, because that might spark an interest. That might get them to, like you were saying just now, like LA, why is it so dry? Why is it so windy? Why do fires spread so quickly?
Yeah.
I think it was like Desmond Tutu or someone said, swim upstream, find the root cause, fix the root cause, and then you'll see that hopefully it would make some kind of change. That's what you've got to hope for.
And that's what you're doing. You're doing that with these projects, and you're going, actually right into the communities, which is amazing. And I have to say, this is all volunteer work. This is all Kim's, she has a day job like we all do, but you do this kind of, outside of work hours, and I think your passion is amazing. So talk, there's some big people involved in some of these projects.
There are. I think that's important to kind of cut through the noise. The bottom left there, that's Ed O'Brien. He's a bassist with Radiohead. He works with In Place of War. He's actually doing this rather remarkable thing as a part of the EarthSonic program, where I think he's going to go to northern Norway, ride out on a husky with a group of people, make some music over a couple of days, come back and play it as part of a music festival. So he's one of our trustees as well. The lady he's standing there with is Nuka Alice, who I was talking about before. She's one of the Indigenous artists that they're working with and sampling her music. And the guy in the red on the end there, he's a DJ, and they actually have tried... previously, they've had an album called Cuckoo Sonic, where they took samples of animals from the rainforest and made them into tracks, and he did something with frog noises, which sounds really strange, but it's worth listening to, I promise. And then top left is Colombia, and In Place of War, the premise is that they give creative tools to communities that are probably very divided, trying to unify them together. And I actually went there and experienced this jamming session, and the sheer joy and delight just from giving them a set of decks so that they could then play with and experiment with music with each other was quite fun, really. But
So, and I think you said some of these actual recordings are available.
They are, yeah. Like I say, EarthSonic is
Fine.
available right now. It's also made on vinyl, which is
Yes.
plant-based. So that I think
How
is
cool is
quite
that?
clever
Yeah,
as well. But
yeah.
don't
And it's
ask
vinyl,
me how they do
as
that.
in,
But,
as
yeah.
in, so it's not downloadable.
I think you can stream it. I'm sure.
'Cause that's still
yeah,
green,
yeah,
I guess.
Yeah.
But having a vinyl product or something like that that's also
Yeah. I think it's
a
just at
green
the
product.
forefront of our minds, particularly when you do this literacy training, of you need to change and shift your mindset
Yeah,
in everything that you do.
definitely. So, I mean, amazing project, and we just kind of wanted to showcase those to you to sort of show what can be done. And I think just it's very different. It's very different from us just doing our recycling or feeling like we're doing our little bit. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, Kim, just on a broader spectrum is you know, there's lots of things that we can do at home, and obviously you get involved in these projects, which is amazing. But if somebody asked you what should they do, just as one thing, because you know you talked about just making a small difference to climate change. If we all do something small, you know, we will help the bigger need. What would you suggest, other than the usual? Think about something perhaps that's right under our noses that we wouldn't think about.
It's interesting because I think even carbon offsetting has become something that's not so palatable anymore, and the justification, and again, the accountability behind it is hard. But again, when we were doing this training, it's something as simple as, who do you have your pension with? Who are you investing your money with? Where does your bank, you know, banking is a really interesting place to start, because they're massive organisations that probably either are or aren't adding or helping with the problem. So, I mean, that's something to review potentially, beyond obviously reviewing how much red meat you eat and the, you know, which car you drive. And even going back to when I was at the BBC in these green memos, it was, are you using plastic bottles or reusable bottles? Are you using eco-friendly car services?
Yeah.
Are you staying in eco-friendly hotels? And all of these things, you're like, how is that going to make a difference? But if we all did it, it would, wouldn't it? It's like anything like this.
Yeah. So I think, you know, that kind of sums up all of the message that we kind of want to get across, and to make you very, very aware of the good work that Kim is doing, and how these projects are unusual but brilliant at engaging kind of young people, and their focus is engaging young people. It's an influencer world, and those projects are big influencer projects to get involved in. And I think just kind of, if anyone watching or anyone you know, here today wants to get involved in any of the projects or help in any way, what do you need? What skills do you need? What can people do?
A little bit of everything, really. EarthSonic, the project, has its own website, so it's earthsonic.org, but we need everything from kind of production skill sets, but also equipment as well. If anyone...
Manufacturers?
It'd be great, obviously, to have a proper platform for this, because it is a 4-year project, and we have a couple of things happening this year, and it would be great to get the messaging out more. And I think obviously I work for ITN, and I've spoken to people there about whether we can use it on assignment and things like that. But I think the value and the investment and the importance of what we're doing really needs that platform. So, and
it comes back to what I said at the beginning a bit about, well, we're in this industry, we need to help we need to create a platform, we need to get that content out there, we need to make people more aware of this kind of stuff that's happening. And,
yeah, definitely.
You know, I guess that's what we're doing. We're trying to do that today. And thank you everyone for being here and for listening to us, and hopefully, you know, you'll get a bit more traction on your website, and people will, you know, start to look at doing things a bit differently, actually. So that's me. I'll wrap it up now. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening.